Your CPU performs billions of operations every single second. This scale creates a specific engineering challenge, delivering data fast enough to keep the cores fed. System RAM operates at a fraction of that speed. When requiring data from main memory, this timing disparity forces the cores to stop and wait. CPU cache addresses this bottleneck. It is a layer of ultra-fast memory built directly onto the silicon to store the most critical information. Modern processors distribute this memory across 3 distinct levels: L1, L2, and L3. If cache is efficient, dividing it into 3 separate tiers suggests a complex physical trade-off. Raw processing power is ineffective if the memory subsystem cannot keep pace with the execution cores. Think of the CPU as a master chef and system RAM as a massive storage room down the hall. Walking to the storage room for every ingredient would idle the kitchen. Instead, the chef uses a small workspace immediately next to the cutting board.
CPU cache is that workspace. It stores only the data and instructions the processor uses most frequently, keeping them within immediate reach of the cores. Cache functions alongside RAM, keeping highly useful data physically closer to the execution units to reduce retrieval time. This diagram shows the memory hierarchy. At the top are CPU registers, followed by L1, L2, and L3 cache, system RAM, and storage drives. As memory sits further from the cores, storage capacity increases, but access latency increases with it. L1 cache is the smallest and fastest main cache layer, sitting in the closest physical proximity to the execution cores. Most architectures divide L1 into 2 streams. The L1 instruction cache holds the commands the CPU needs to execute, while the L1 data cache holds the information the CPU will process. This is the frontline supply. It must be physically flush with the cores for immediate response. The size of L1 is strictly limited by available silicon space. If L1 is so fast, why not build the entire cache at that level? Engineering memory to match the CPU's internal clock speed while placing it directly against the cores is expensive and physically difficult. L2 cache serves as a middle layer. It provides more storage than L1, though it takes slightly longer for the processor to access. Beyond that is the L3 cache. This layer is much larger and is often shared across all cores on the chip, reducing the need to access system RAM for shared data. These configurations are not universal. Cache sizes and how they are shared depend entirely on the specific CPU architecture. The 3 levels exist because physics forces a compromise between the speed of the L1 and the storage capacity needed to manage complex modern software. When the CPU finds requested data in the cache, it's a cache hit. The processor continues immediately. A cache miss occurs when data is absent. The CPU checks each level in sequence, eventually reaching system RAM, significantly slowing the operation. Avoiding these delays requires the hardware to predict which data will be needed next. Temporal locality assumes that if a piece of data was used recently, the CPU will likely call for it again soon. Spatial locality assumes that when the CPU accesses a memory location, the data physically adjacent to it will be needed next. Hardware prediction mechanisms actively manage the cache, prioritizing specific data to minimize the time penalty of a cache miss. A larger cache capacity does not automatically result in a faster processor. Performance is a result of many variables, including the architecture, clock speeds, and the overall latency of the memory subsystem. Gaming workloads often benefit from larger caches because game engines frequently access massive amounts of localized data. However, the actual impact varies by game engine and software optimization. In many scenarios, the GPU or the CPU's architecture will be the primary limiting factor. In memory design, capacity and speed remain in tension. Increasing one often requires a trade-off in the other. Here is a quick quiz based on what we've covered. Which cache level is typically the fastest? Is it A, L1, B, L2, C, L3, or D, RAM? The answer is A, L1 cache. Let us know in the comments if you got it right. To summarize, L1 is the smallest and fastest, L2 serves as the middle layer, and L3 provides a large shared pool, all supported by the massive capacity of system RAM. Modern processors cannot rely on RAM alone because the difference in latency would force the cores to idle for millions of cycles every second. CPU cache exists to bridge this gap, ensuring that the processing cores spend less time waiting for data and more time executing instructions.